Alright guys, have your note sheet ready? We're taking a look at the second New Deal. So while the first New Deal was focused on relief, recovery, and reform, what we want to take a look at with the second New Deal is how did this continue to investigate situations in which we can provide solutions to problems caused by the Depression. While there is no mastery objective listed, what I'd like you to answer is this question that I have for you: is how is the second New Deal different than the first New Deal? So let's start with this. The second New Deal is going to address a couple of specific issues, and make sure you can address these. The problems and issues that it would mainly focus on is the elderly, the unemployed, so this is a major continuation from the first New Deal, and the rights of workers. Some of the most important second New Deal programs is one that you see listed that we've talked about in the Works Progress Administration. They improved highways, dredged rivers, harbors, and promoted water conservation, but most importantly, it was providing jobs to men who were unemployed to do these tasks. Probably one that you're familiar with is known as Social Security. So Social Security provides, it was based upon unemployment for workers who lost their jobs. It created insurance for victims from work-related incidents, benefits to poverty-stricken mothers and children, and the blind and disabled, but probably what it's most well known for is a pension for the elderly. How Social Security works is a complicated process that you can see through this diagram here. So basically, as you can see from the top left, an employee pays a percentage of his or her salary, and it goes into a Social Security trust fund. Employers do the same, and within that trust fund, payments are made to, as it says, retirees, the disabled, survivors, and dependents, and then a surplus is the government hangs on to in the form of treasury bonds, so that way if it is later needed, it is there for the taking. It is a situation that we'll talk about tomorrow in terms of how it could be limited going forward, especially with future generations. Another key program is known as the Wagner Act. Wagner Act focused on workers' rights. It's also known as the United States National Labor Relations Board, but it guaranteed the rights of employees to take part in labor unions and gave workers the rights to collectively bargain. So this is just negotiating the right for wages and their working conditions, because prior to this it was not guaranteed. Another one is known as the Fair Labor Standards Act, and this would establish a minimum wage initially at about 25 cents, and it maxed out a work hour at 44 hours per week before one would have to be paid overtime. Some of the challenges going forward, before we get to those, we take a look at this 1936 election map. FDR gets 61% of the vote in the 1936 election for his second term. This is the second of his 4 elections that he would win. The big thing that he's going to focus on within this term is that he was determined to challenge the Supreme Court, who struck down many of his programs as unconstitutional. So the one that we had mentioned yesterday, or earlier today, was that the AAA, the Agricultural Adjustment Act, was deemed unconstitutional. He wanted to prevent further New Deal programs from being deemed unconstitutional. So his first act came to be known as the Court Packing Plan. In 1937, FDR called for the adding of 6 new justices to the 9-member court. And the main reason that he supported this, he justified it, was the fact that the Constitution does not specify the number of judges that there can be on the Supreme Court. His big argument was that the justices were elderly and they were overworked. A lot of people criticized this, and as I said earlier, they called it the Court Packing Plan. So we can see in this cartoon here of FDR represented as a quarterback says to the referee, "I want 6 substitutes at once, but these fellows don't know it, but they're going through. But I don't want to take them off the field," meaning that he just wanted to add players without taking them off. So Congress felt threatened by this action, did not add any more justices, but did end up passing more New Deal programs. So it did work out for FDR in the long run. His critics accused him of upsetting the balance of power of the 3 branches of government. So it's an opportunity for his critics really to be vocal about a situation in which he tried to do something that no president had done before. Hence we see some opposition to the New Deal. the chief complaint about the New Deal is that it made the government way too powerful. In a book written in 1934 known as The Challenge of Liberty, predecessor to FDR, Herbert Hoover, described the New Deal as the most stupendous invasion of the whole spirit of liberty. This is really the voice of a lot of Republicans during this time. A lot of conservatives accused FDR of being a socialist, and others, though these are supporters of FDR, said that the New Deal did not go far enough. So there were definitely people on either end of the spectrum thinking that he was doing too much or simply not enough. So let's take a look at the lasting impact and the cost of this all. We see the deficit in 1932 being about $461 million. By 1936, it would be $4.4 billion. This was justified by an economic theory by the economist John Maynard Keyes. He said that putting people to work on public projects puts money in the hands of consumers who would buy more goods, which would stimulate the economy. It's known as pump priming. Whether or not one agree with that, it's more of a personal opinion, but it's the issue behind this topic. So the question, did it work? Well, the New Deal increased the size and the scope of the federal government. That's by far its longest legacy. In the first time, the federal government became an institution that was directly experienced. As we take a look at this chart here, did the New Deal actually do anything in terms of helping the economy? Well, you can see based upon when the first New Deal came out in 1933, then the Supreme Court declares many of his New Deal programs unconstitutional. When the New Deal Part 2 begins and World War II begins, that really unemployment kind of fluctuated up and down. In fact, New Deal programs never drove unemployment lower than 20%. What did drive unemployment down was the United States' entry into World War II. So can it be said that the New Deal ended the Great Depression? No, that's really World War II what helped us to get out of this mess. But I guess we could say that it did help to restore the American economy. So its lasting impact, there's a couple of things I want you to be aware of. First of all, like I said, the New Deal increased the size and scope of the federal government. And for the first time, the federal government was being something that was directly impacted and experienced by Americans on an individual basis. Didn't end the Depression, but it did help to restore the American economy. It broke the tradition of laissez-faire, or leaving the economy alone. For the first time, we see the government was acting as an employer of the unemployed. And lastly, FDR was often accused of promoting socialism with how involved the government was becoming. But the Federal Deposit Insurance Company and the Security Exchange Act restored American trust in banks and the stock market and are still widely used today among some of the other programs such as Social Security.